There it goes. Good morning, all. Welcome to another open Q&A session of going over the electronic annual report and SB 1383 reporting. And again, as previous formats, we will be here to answer questions for you regarding the electronic annual report. We don't have a formal presentation for you, so you can post your messages in the chat. If you're watching through the Cal EPA broadcast, you can send your questions to slcp.organics@calrecycle.ca.gov. And with that, we can go ahead and get going. There are a couple things that I wanted to kind of address in the beginning that I have a feeling people probably have questions about. So with that, let me switch over to the reporting screen here. And just to double check, just since we're using a new platform, I just want to check real quick to make sure everyone can see my screen that I'm sharing. Can't hear anything. All right, we'll work through technical difficulties first before we actually get going here. Can anyone else confirm that they can hear me on the recording?
I can hear you, Andrew, and
we can hear you, Andrew.
Hear you.
All right, fantastic. Thank you. So if you, I guess if you cannot hear me, maybe try resetting. I'm just going to type that in the chat real quick. Okay. All right. So with that, a couple of things that I get common questions on. And again, just so you know, we're in our staging environment. So any data you see is not actually a jurisdiction's data. This is our testing environment and numbers that we have input for testing purposes to work through bugs or work through the reporting. And then also, Chris or Kara, if you could just make sure we're getting those people that are entering the waiting room into here as well.
Will do.
Thank you. Okay, so a couple of things I wanted to touch on as far as kind of basic function. And actually, let me go to one that's, oh, I'll find one that needs to be submitted still. Okay. Actually, sorry, this is a bad example. It's not going to have what I wanted to show you. Let me go to a different jurisdiction. Oh man, I'm striking out left and right here. Okay. And down here in all the SHRE programs, and also I just want to check one more time to make sure that my drawing tool, which I'm about to use, can you see the red box on the screen?
Yes.
Okay, fantastic. I just wanted to point this out on any of these SHRE program sections. So anywhere where there is a checkbox and kind of a hyperlink to the program details of a SHRE program, this box in particular is limited to 2,500 characters, which I'm highlighting in that instructions at the top. The reason for that is that we found we had performance issues if we allowed more characters than that to be entered on this particular screen. If you need to enter more than 2,500 characters, let me activate the, this is a submitted page. But after you check the box, which this one's already checked next to the program, if you click on the hyperlink, and it takes just a moment for it to load. And this notes box here, you can enter more than 2,500 characters. So if you need to enter more than 2,500 characters, you have to go to the program details page that I'm showing on the screen right now. I'm going to go back. If you try to enter 2,500 characters more, like if you're copy pasting from a Word document or something like that, it'll cut it off at the 2500 mark. So it'll look like it's not copying all the way over. So I just want to point that out. So more than 2500 characters, have to click on the program details, which you access by clicking on the hyperlink here. And that goes for any of those program details. Okay. I don't know. Starting to get quite a few questions here, so maybe we should jump into those and then I can address some other areas because I'm sure they'll come up.
Actually, Andrew, we do have a related question to this.
Okay.
One, is there a reference list of all the SHRE programs instead of going back and forth?
There is. So if you're looking at it for within your own electronic annual report, you can go to the additional information and report management tab. And it will have a listing of all of the SHRE programs that you've selected for your EAR personally. There's also a reference on our website, which I don't have that link readily available, but I'm sure we can get it to you before this webinar ends, of kind of describing what each of these programs more and more so than just the program name.
Okay. And also related to SHRE programs, if we are entering collection program tonnage, for example, curbside recycling, is there an efficient place to enter it so we don't have to make multiple entries?
Well, I'll show you where you can enter on a per SHRE program basis your diversion tons. That would be right here as you enter the program details. But just to point out, this is not a required field to fill out. Everything is auto-populated with 0.00. There's no requirement to put in diversion tonnage here, but if you'd like to, the only way to do it is to go to these program details on a per SHRE program basis. Anything else related to SHRE programs?
Just related to that request for a list of programs, the descriptions. One thing, one by one, you have the note help button right there, but we also have the larger document.
All right, I'm gonna go back up to the top to, looks like Andrew Caravillo's question. Is there an improved conversion factor for LNG gallons to the DGE unit being used in the EAR reporting? And just to kind of give a visual aid to what we're talking about. And actually, I need to go to a different report so we can actually get into those grids. One moment. And I am just not doing very good at picking jurisdictions to show you things with. All right, there we go. Okay. So I believe the question is kind of in reference to this area here.
Andrew, really quick, couple people are saying that it's due to the Zoom meeting, it's a little blurry and people can't see. Can you maybe zoom in a little bit on your screens?
There, is that better?
Let's hope so.
Okay. So Andrew, I'll just restate the question one more time. Is there an improved conversion factor for LNG gallons to the DGE unit being used in the EAR reporting? The regulations do not specify any conversion factors. However, if you go to our model reporting tools website, we do have an adjusted procurement tool on that page. And one of the tabs has kind of some reference conversion factors that you can use as a reference tool. And I think the important part with that is in your record keeping is just to document any conversions that you do and how you got to your DGE units that you're reporting in the electronic annual report. All right.
So staying on procurement while we're here,
Mm-hmm.
can you please go into detail about the procurement? Is it a pre-filled number? If so, where do the numbers come from?
Sure. I'm going to cancel out of this screen. go up to where he's talking about. Make it just a little bit larger. All right. So the question I think is in reference to here, specifically to the procurement target listed here. So this is pre-populated. This is based on the population of your jurisdiction, which we provided. I think what your target number was going to be at the end of 2021, beginning of 2022. So quite some time ago, we provided that information. And that's the number that's pre-populated here. So this is based on your population. Anything else on procurement while we're here?
Mulches and tons, correct?
Mulches and tons, yes, that would be one update that will make MEC's reporting cycle in reference to here too. In the regulations, mulch is only allowed to be reported in tons, not cubic yards.
Okay, and a follow-up question to the pre-filled one is, what about the annual procurement and target?
So the annual procurement here is populated by what you enter into the recovered organic waste product procured grid. And I can just show you that real quick, just so you get a have a visual aid. So it is based on the calculation factors within the regulations, which I believe is 189931G. I believe is where those conversion factors are listed. So after you enter your data in the grid and hit save, it'll populate the annual procurement, which you can compare with your procurement target. The adjusted procurement target is based on, let me just do it here since it is on the screen, is based on the values input into the adjusted recovered organic waste product procured grid. And this would be used if you wanted to implement an adjusted recovered organic waste product procurement target based on your total energy use, if you feel the procurement target is higher than the amount of products that you would actually use. So the way this would work is you'd say yes here, which activates these cells. And then for transportation fuel, electricity, and gas used for heating applications, for the previous calendar year, you enter your total usage, whether they're derived from organic waste products or not. So the transportation fuel would be things such as your maintenance vehicles, your police force, your fire, whatever city run programs you have. So you'd enter that total number here. Your electricity would be for street lights or facilities for the entire city or county. You enter that information there. And then same with the gas used for heating application, be for your total city usage. You hit save, and then it populates that number in the top of the grid.
Hey, Andrew, this is Kara. I just wanted to maybe chat a little bit about, since this report that's due October 3rd is covering the first 6 months for 13.3, it's possible that stakeholders may not have any procurement to show. They may end up reporting in the report that's due next August. Do you want to talk a little bit about that and what to do in that situation? And it's A-okay to have zeros here?
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. So yes, so this, for this reporting period, for the SB 1383 reporting requirements, we're covering the period of January 1st, 2022 to June 30th, 2022. So if you have not procured anything yet in that 6-month period, you're still required to put an entry in here so that the system records that cell is complete. And so we kind of have those instructions up here at the top of the page as well. But you just need to hit zeros in here. You can use this in additional description box, which is optional to explain why there's zeros here. Have not procured yet, since this report's only covering a 6-month period. as an example, and you enter save. So yes, your annual procurement would show 0 compared to your procurement target. But you still have an additional 6 months, and so you'll report on all of 2022 in August of 2023. We want to go on the rest of it with AB 939 and MCR and more as well, Kara?
No, I think we can hold it unless there's questions. for
Okay,
that.
we have plenty of questions still on procurement. So is there an approved conversion factor for LNG gallons to the DGE unit being used for EAR reporting?
Yeah, that was the one that I think I already addressed, but I'll just say it one more time. So no, there's no approved conversion factors for that in the regulations. However, on our model reporting tools website, I'll see if I can grab that for you. Sorry, I'm getting used. Oh, here, we can do it here. Sorry, I was zoomed in. I couldn't see what I was doing. Just go to it real quick and show you. So on our webpage, if you go programs and SB 1383 implementation, it's the first link in program news. As one spot you can get to it, and even kind of has it listed in this current hyperlink. This is going to get updated soon to, I think, more reflect all the webinars that we've been doing, just because this is kind of our most current news. So if that's not obvious of what it's getting you to, the other way you can get to it is by scrolling down the page and clicking on this reporting tile here. And if you scroll down, right here, we have the adjusted procurement target tool. It'll do a download for an Excel file. And as a reference, we have the factors here, and it shows you the source of those calculation factors. Were there more procurement questions?
Well, yeah, we'll be on this for a little bit. Is DGE equivalent to LNG gallon?
No, I would look at that reference tool that I just provided to look at those conversion factors.
Okay. Is renewable diesel counted in procurement?
I think we need a little more information on exactly what they mean there. Whether they're talking about which grid they're talking about specifically.
Okay. So again, if you can put some clarification, we'll get back to it.
Hey, Andrew, on that one, I think we need clarification to know if they're asking about using that for their reduced target, or are they asking in general if renewable diesel counts as an organic waste product procurement? So if you could clarify that, that would be helpful.
Yes.
Not Andrew, but the person asking the question.
Thank you. Thank you, Kara.
You bet.
Okay. Next procurement question. Can we include the purchase of compost from residential yard trimmings cart for a compost giveaway, even though this material was not originally destined to go to landfill?
I think I need to see that one in writing.
Yeah, I'll take it while you're looking at it. So the key is that any compost that's procured must meet the requirements in the procurement regulations. So as long as that material, for example, was processed at an applicable facility that's identified in the regulations, for example, permitted compost facility, permitted in-vessel digestion facility, et cetera, then it can count. So recognizing that you may have had a residential yard waste collection program for some time. So to answer the second part of the question, yes, even though you've had that program ongoing, it can still count as long as the material is going through the applicable facilities and you're meeting those requirements of the reg. Let us know if you have any follow-up questions to that, Minette.
Thank you, Kara.
Okay. Also, anyone out there asking questions, since we're on the procurement screen, anyone asking questions about not procurement right now, I'm just stashing those and we'll get back to you. Because while we're here, we're going to kind of focus on this stuff. Next up, on procurement calculator, there's never a reduction based on usage of non-organic derived electricity, gas, and fuel. However, there is no infrastructure for these required commodities.
And then Susan, if you want to provide more information on what your question is, we'd be happy to answer your question.
Is Susan unmuted so she could ask it?
Let me find that because the setup's a little clunky for doing
No
that.
worries. Yeah, Susan, I think we need a little bit of clarification. So in general, for a reduced procurement target, you can use non-organic derived electricity, gas, and fuel for that. And Andrew took us through those steps to put that information in. For organic waste products procured, it is true that those those materials must meet the requirements. And again, that's ensuring that it's organic waste that has been processed at specific facilities. So if you are lacking in infrastructure, for example, and there's not supply of those organic waste products, that can be understandable. And so two things: you should add a note in the additional details box about the challenges that you're facing, but also we would ask that you would connect with your local assistance and market development liaison so we can talk more about various options that you might have and look at those kinds of things. So feel free to do that as a follow-up. Is Susan unmuted?
Hi, Kara. Sorry, this is Ray. Susan, you have to unmute yourself. Susan Contreras of El Monte.
Okay,
Yeah, the request to unmute was sent.
Okay, I'm unmuted. So that answers my question. Because we can't, we don't have easy access to the proper CNG, electric, gas, and so we're kind of stuck, and there's no way we can use enough compost and mulch in our little cities with not a lot of green space.
And I think, Susan, a lot of jurisdictions are in your same spot. Again, as the supply of materials, particularly with RNG or electricity, as that starts that supply starts to increase, it'll be easier. And that was really kind of the purpose behind the legislation that the governor just signed, AB 1985. So again, in this first year, in this case, the first 6 months, share with us what you are doing, even if you don't hit your target. And then in the next annual report, again, share with us what you are trying to do, but also if anyone would like to have a follow-up conversation, be happy to do that. And also our procurement webinar, which is up on our website. We had some amazing jurisdictions sharing some very creative approaches to what they're doing to try and achieve their procurement targets. So please, if you didn't see that webinar, we encourage you to do so. Thanks so much, Susan. Appreciate it.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, and those webinars, a lot of them were, for agricultural communities and stuff, and that just doesn't apply in a lot of our LA County cities.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay,
happy to have a follow-up. Thanks, Susan.
So our next question comes from Rosie Ledesma, asking, in general, what is the purpose of the adjusted procurement entries and how will that data be used for future adjustments?
So the adjusted recovered organic waste product procurement, let me get out of this so I can go to it. This grid here, the adjusted recovered organic waste product procured. The purpose of it is if your total energy usage for the previous calendar year, you would not be able to hit your procurement target just because you don't use enough of these products here. That's when you'd want to enter this information to adjust your procurement target to make it lower than than your procurement target that's based on your population. And it's only, this is a year-to-year adjustment. So it only applies for that reporting cycle, and it's based on the previous year's data. So in August of 2022, you would be entering your total energy usage, regardless if it's organically derived or not, for transportation fuel, electricity, and gas used for heating applications for 2021. Does that answer your question, Rosie?
Rosie, if you wanted to further clarify, please go ahead and unmute yourself.
No, that answered it. Thank you. Appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Moving on, Marissa Jeweler asks, as a county, we thought SB 1383 required us to report all EFR pounds collected for jurisdictions in our county. However, each city is telling us that they are to report their own tonnage, which is correct.
Hey, Andrew, I'll take that one really quick. So Marissa, each jurisdiction that has a food recovery or food recovery service located in the jurisdiction is the one that's responsible for receiving those reports from those food recovery organizations and services and reporting that tonnage in their annual report. So the county does not consolidate all of that information and report it. The county, for the unincorporated area, if there are food recovery organizations or services located in the unincorporated area, then they would be providing those reports to the county, and you would include that in your report. And we'll go into that further. So if there's any follow-ups to your question, let us know. Go ahead, Ray. Next question.
Yep. Next, we're going to Colleen Weeks, who would like to confirm that the prior year procurement gas can be natural gas and electricity. Does it have to be in any electricity or just made from other sources, like from the treatment plant conversion?
So there's kind of two parts to that, Colleen. So if I'll start here with the adjusted recovered organic waste product procured grid. So for here, actually, let me enter the grid so you can see a little bit better. So in the adjusted recovered organic waste product procured for, let's see, we're talking about gas. This would be all sources of gas used, whether it's organically derived or not. If you're talking about, let me get out of this one and go to the other grid. If you're talking about recovered organic waste products procured to meet your procurement target, let's see, where is gas? Gas here needs to be from gas that's organically derived. Does that answer your question, Colleen?
Colleen, you have to unmute yourself if you would like to elaborate on that question.
Yeah, it answers the question, but I have a lot of cities that are going to have to do some big jumping and trying to get information in a very few days.
Okay.
All right, now we have a few more questions that came in. Let's see. Let's see. Okay, so for edible food recovery, if a food recovery organization collects across jurisdictions, is the city where the food recovery organization located, is it responsible for reporting the tonnage for those tons collected outside of their city?
Yes, it is. So again, as we shared earlier, thank you for the questions. It's that food recovery organization in the jurisdiction in which it's located, regardless of where it collects edible food from, is reporting that tonnage to the jurisdiction. And then that jurisdiction is reporting that information to CalRecycle.
And I think we already touched on this, but just because there are so many questions in the comment pane, Juan Ibarra asks, can we use CNG for procurement target?
If it's, oh, sorry, I'm going to the wrong spot. So again, it kind of depends on what you're talking about, Juan. Are you talking about the recovered organic waste product procured or adjusted recovered organic waste product procured grid?
Juan, you'll have to unmute yourself and please remind everybody your association.
Hi, City of Lomito, be on products procured. Also waste products procured, sorry, apologies.
Towards your procurement target.
That is correct.
So these would have to become from an approved facility. And then Kara, would you mind restating that for me, please?
Sure. And I think what I'll do, since we've had a few questions on this, I'll put a few things in the chat for everyone to go back and reference. But one, the CNG has to be derived from organic waste and produced at a facility that's identified in the regulation. So typically that will be an in-vessel digestion facility that meets the requirements of the regulations, and that material is produced from organic waste. So not all CNG is going to count, because there's a lot of CNG that comes from other sources of material. So I'll put some information in the chat. And Juana, if you want to do any follow-up and dive deeper, we do have a lot of information on our procurement website, which I think will answer your questions. If not, please feel free to reach out to your local assistance liaison, and we'll be happy to set up a follow-up meeting. Hope that helps.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Veronica Pardo asks, can we speak to SB 1440 CPUC proceeding where utilities will be used as biogas derived from SB 1383 organic waste in buildings? Is there a pathway for jurisdictions to count this future biogas towards their procurement?
I'm not familiar with that one. Kara, do you have anything to say?
Yeah, hey Veronica, could we do a follow-up? Because I'm not sure we're familiar enough with that. But again, anything that meets the requirements of the regulation, again, produced at certain facilities, it was organic waste, et cetera, can count. If it doesn't fit what's laid out in Article 12 of the regulations, we do not have a path for adding different types of products that are not already identified in the regulation. So not sure if you have anything else to add, Veronica?
Oh, thank you. We'll speak, I'll reach out to you, Kara, because I think the concern here is that this is a utility derived biogas, and so the utilities would be using it. This is for the SB 1440 procurement effort to use an additional 8 million tons of organic waste, specifically food waste. They're supposed to be working towards procuring that gas for the utilities, but I think it's unclear how jurisdictions would then potentially apply that for procurement efforts. And this is for the future, really.
Got it. Yeah, I'll follow up. We do have, if it fits, we do have some questions and answers on the procurement FAQs that addresses how a jurisdiction can claim procurement of, for example, electricity, et cetera. So that may help answer the question also, but happy to do a follow-up, Veronica. Thanks.
Thank you, Kara. So Kanisha Pompey, apologies, it's not showing me the full name, to the adjustment factor, would we have to receive approval from LAM staff, or can we decide to use it as we complete the EAR? I think we might need a little more, so just go ahead and unmute yourself and provide any other additional information, please.
Yeah, and while we're unmuting, just to help answer that question, there's not an approval process. So what you will do is either in this annual report or in the next annual report. And then if you do it every year with a reduced target, you just provide that in the annual report, what your reduced target is based on. It's important that you adhere to the record keeping requirements that are laid out in the regulations also. And then you report on what you actually procured. So it's a reporting requirement. There's not a pre-approval or post-approval of that a reduced target. So I hope that helps answer the question. Let us know if you have a follow-up.
Okay, I think that covered it then. So JC Bolden, does CNG that appears to be generated primarily from cows count toward procurement?
You know, I think in general, all these specific questions just kind of go back to what Kara already stated, that it needs to be organically derived and then also from one of the facilities outlined in the regulations. And again, I think that procurement website that we linked in the chat will answer a lot of these questions for you, because those also lead to FAQs on procurement, which will answer these questions and point you to the sections of regulations that we're speaking of.
Thank you. And can you confirm that that did answer the question? So appreciate that, Andrew and Kara. Ursula from Cupertino is our final procurement target question, stating that their understanding is that the target is based on population, but the adjusted procurement target questions relate to municipal use of fuel, electricity, and heating and gas. How do those inform each other?
It's really, I mean, they're not really related. The adjusted procurement, recovered organic waste product procured, and then therefore the adjusted procurement target, it was put into the regulations that if your total usage of those energy products, even if you procured all of it from organically derived sources, you would still get nowhere near your procurement target. That's why that was built into the regulations, to give you a way to reduce your target and be more realistic on what you're actually using, as opposed to what being based solely on your population.
It looks like our next set of questions is contamination monitoring. If you're ready to move on to there, Andrew.
Yeah, I saw one that I wanted to address real quick before we move on, because I think it'll help them to know what to pay attention to. And it was, I think, sorry if I mispronounce it, but Shu Navarro. And the question is, does the reporting form look different for smaller special districts? And so right now we're in kind of like a full jurisdiction report, and I just want to highlight kind of the different tabs up here. This would be the easiest way to show you. So for special collection districts that provide solid waste collection, you are only required to report on SB 1383. So what you're looking at now includes SB 1383, AB 939, MCR, and more. And I'm just going to go to it real fast here. So if we go to a special collection district, you'll notice that there's not as many tabs. And then even within these tabs, for example, in the commercial section, it's only talking about material types. You don't have the SRE program sections. It's normally down here at the bottom of the page. So yes, there's a lot less reporting requirements for the special collection districts that provide solid waste collection. All right, Ray, you can carry on. Thank you.
Thank you for that clarification. So, Sinchi Tan asks, in reporting the number of route reviews, am I right in assuming we are reporting the number of routes and not the number of containers? The reason I ask is because different haulers may have a variety of different number of generators / containers in a single route. And Sinchi, I apologize if I mispronounced your name. You can go ahead and unmute yourself if there's any other further clarifications you'd like to add.
All right, I saw that one in the chat. Let me just scroll to it to make sure I answer all the parts. All right. All right, so we're talking about the contamination monitoring for prohibited container contaminants grid. which is within your contamination inspections and complaints section. And so, yes, you're reporting the number of routes reviewed here, not the number of containers.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
Mhm.
Our next question is from Jasmine Hayden. Also regarding route reviews. Are we required by 81383 to tag containers with good job tags, or is that up to the jurisdiction? Do carts tagged with good job tags need to be counted towards notices given, or are we only supposed to report, quote, oops tagged carts?
Yeah, I think the intention here is more on the oops side of things and not necessarily a good job tag. And then in the future, like on the next reporting cycle, we are going to add an additional description box to this field so that you can provide, if you do decide to report on those good job tags, you can provide that additional clarification.
Thank you. Our next question, also regarding contamination, is from Annette. Do we include information for green, like yard trimming carts, and blue mixed recycling? Minette, you are unmuted. You need to unmute yourself if you want to add to that.
Thank you. Yeah, I was unsure if that was specifically for or organics carts, or if we needed to include route reviews and evaluations for specifically green carts and blue carts.
Yeah, route reviews or waste evaluations are on all routes. So that would be on gray container, blue container, and green container.
Great.
All routes need to be reviewed.
Got it. Sounds good.
Thank you. The next question is, does CalRecycle consider debris boxes in contamination monitoring? They're asking specifically because wood and C&D is collected only through debris box service, but not regular curbside service. So that will influence whether we check boxes for those materials.
Yeah, Kara, there was something specific about C&D. Would you mind addressing that one?
Yeah, good questions. So the Article 3 requirements apply to all of the collection containers. So you would want to be checking those. However, there are, depending on how the jurisdiction oversees C&D collection and how that program is administered under CalGreen, maybe that monitoring is happening in a different way versus route reviews. So that would be an important conversation to have with the jurisdiction as to how those debris boxes are being monitored for contamination. So I hope that's helpful.
I asked that question, and just to clarify, I guess we were wondering more so because we do report on the C&D diversion on different tabs or different sections of the report, but this is specifically on the residential and commercial programs. So yeah, just clarifying, do the debris boxes should they be included in commercial and residential programs, or is that okay if we just report on in other sections?
Yeah, so Cynthia, again, it depends on how you're monitoring that C&D collection. So if that is checked for contamination in a different way, then I would suggest that you just add a note in the additional details, and not necessarily having to report on that or do random reviews, et cetera. So it really just depends on how your program is implemented. The important thing is that, those debris boxes are monitored in some way, but typically with debris boxes that contamination is checked in kind of a different way, right? When it goes to the facility, et cetera.
Mhm.
So just depends on how your program is implemented, and then just add a note in the additional details so that you can clarify that. Does that help?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
I'm going to add on a little bit to that, Kara, just
Sure.
because this particular grid doesn't have an additional detail,
Oh,
additional
sorry.
description box at this point. And just to kind of generalize that what you're reporting on in contamination monitoring is for route reviews and waste evaluation. So regardless of residential, commercial, or these debris boxes, if you're doing route reviews or waste evaluations, you'd report that here. It's not necessarily limited to residential and commercial.
Okay, yeah, and I guess maybe this question was more for a different section. So the tab that I was looking at is not under contamination, but under like the 4th tab, commercial programs and residential programs. And then, so I guess this is where the question is, because we haven't checked any of those building products checkboxes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this is, I mean, these 2 sections for commercial, I see. So you're just saying if the materials are diverted, do we check the box?
Yeah, yeah, and this is, yeah, where my question comes in of like, do you consider debris boxes as part of these programs?
I would say if the material is being diverted to, yes, you can check that box.
Okay.
Thanks, Andrew. I think that was our last procurement question. Now we're going to move over to the collection systems tab, and we will go to Megan Browning of the City of San Diego. There's a number of questions here, but the first is a concern about the disclaimer that it is not a requirement to enter the hauler name. So CalRecycle says that you may identify them however you prefer. If we have a franchise hauler system and all use the same collection system for commercial, is it acceptable to enter our commercial information collectively in one line versus breaking it down by hauler?
Yeah, I mean, I think this serves as kind of a good example of the scenario you're talking about, whereas in this particular example, Mid-Valley Disposal is the only collection service that we entered into this testing scenario as being the hauler for Chochilla, and then therefore they just selected the 3 container system and then specified the number of generators. Does that answer your question?
It was more so if we have multiple haulers, like say we have 3 haulers that all use the same collection type system, should I be breaking it down by each hauler name, or could I just like clump them together in one line?
If they're all the same collection container system, you can clump them all together in the same line.
Okay, perfect. Thank
Yeah.
you so much. I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
And we did receive a few of your questions, Megan, through our SLCP inbox. So the floor is yours if you'd like to add anything to that.
Oh, that was the only question I asked. I just repeated it in the chat. Sorry.
Got it. Not a problem. So now also in commercial programs, since you also asked, does CalRecycle consider, oh, I'm sorry, let's go back. So we'll just jump ahead. Our jurisdiction did not separate between 1826 and 1383 organics waivers. We decided to count all organics waivers as 1383 waivers. Therefore, would we only report these waivers in SLCP and enter 0 for 1826?
Based on the scenario you're describing, it sounds like you had SLCP supersede more, which is the more stringent requirement. So yes, that is appropriate. The reason we have kind of the more exemptions box still is for those scenarios where they may be exempt from, like if you have a low population waiver and exempt from SB 1383 requirements, more still applies. So we had to include both. And then to kind of go one step further, you can do exactly what's actually written on the screen here and just enter 0 and say not applicable on the more exemption section. Or provide that additional clarity that, you know, SLCP superseded and therefore our numbers are all reported in the jurisdiction issues waivers grid.
Thank you. Also from the SLCP inbox, we have Marie Ann Antigua from Long Beach Recycles asking under the collection systems, collection container systems, are we asking for the total number of generators or the number of generators with service?
Well, that's a great question. So now that you brought that up, I'm just going to jump to a scenario to answer this question, and hopefully it answers this question. So for the collection container system grid, our scenarios, there's 1,000 total commercial generators. 100 generators have gray only, no green or blue service. 400 generators have gray and blue with no green container service due to not having subscribed yet. 200 generators have gray and blue with the green container being waived. And 300 generators have gray, blue, and green. And this is a 3-container collection system, if I didn't specify that already. So in the collection container grid, as highlighted, you report 500 generators having the 3-container collection system. For the 200 generators that have gray and blue and the waiver, plus the 300 generators that have gray, blue, and green, as opposed to reporting 1,000. And then in your additional description box, you can make that note to add that additional clarity if you want to specify. Does that answer your question?
Marianne, you'll have to unmute yourself if you have anything else to that piece. If not, we'll move on to your next question. Okay. Marie would also like to know if under enforcement and monitoring notice of violation, is reporting 0 the correct answer since fines cannot be incurred until January 2024?
Reporting 0 where?
Under enforcement and monitoring notices of violations, the NOVs.
Oh, down here at the bottom. Sorry, I missed that part. So yes, you'd be entering 0 if no notices of violation are issued for these respective categories. And I think we have notes in here. I think you're talking about the tier 2, but which starts in 2024 specifically. But yes, you are correct to enter 0 there.
Hey, Andrew, just to add on, can you hit on the example I have up on the screen about what was put in for additional description for that scenario? Because I think that's helpful.
Oh, yeah. And so, yes, so that additional description box, you can specify no notices of violation at this time. If you're going to talk about tier 2 edible food generators specifically, say due to this not starting until 2024. Is the additional clarity you're looking for, Kara? Or was there something else you wanted me to specify?
Nope, that's it.
Okay.
Thank you. I think we'll just do one more question about just general reporting questions before moving into edible food recovery. Kanisha Pompey would like to know the difference between department issued waivers and jurisdiction waivers.
So the department issued waivers is for low population elevation, or the not rural exemption, I don't think. So low population or a high elevation waiver being issued, that would be where you'd report the number of generators that are waived from collection of that service. Whereas the jurisdiction issued waivers are specifically for the de minimis waivers issued or physical space waivers being issued for a particular container being green or blue.
Hi, so just for clarification, so that means essentially in department, I could say we have 10 overall waivers, but then in jurisdiction, I would break down, we have 5 de minimis and 5 physical space. Is that essentially what we would do?
So just to clarify, you have 10 total waivers, 5 of them being de minimis and 5 of them being physical space.
As an example. So then in department, I would say 10, because it in the description information, it said number of generators waived from requirements. So if overall, let's say I had 10, that had waivers. If we've issued 10 waivers to our businesses, then I would put 10 in department, but then lower in jurisdiction, I would just break down how many of those were de minimis and how many were physical space.
No. So I think the key here is just the names of the grids. So department issued waivers are just the 2 that I mentioned, the low population or the high elevation, where the CalRecycle issued a waiver to the jurisdiction.
Oh, I see. Okay.
And then that makes sense?
Yes. So then, okay. So unless we received a waiver from CalRecycle for those reasons, then that would just be 0.
Correct.
And then what we've issued to our businesses would be in jurisdiction.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Andrew. Rosie Ledesma asks, does reporting tonnage for food recovery organizations include total tonnage of food collected or just from tier 1 and tier 2 generators?
So the reporting requirement is on those specified in the regulations. So it'd be tier 1 and tier 2. You can include the total number. You don't have to like factor out just tier 1 and tier 2. You can include that total number and just specify that in the additional description of what number you're reporting. So this includes tier 1, tier 2, and other generators that don't fit that definition.
Okay, moving on to the MWILO and CalGreen pieces. Jay Leonard asks, as a solid waste division, why are we reporting on MWILO if we have no oversight on this?
Yeah, that's kind of one of the changes of SB 1383 is that it really incorporates more than just solid waste and requires jurisdictions, departments to work together collaboratively to kind of ensure materials are being diverted in all programs, not just with solid waste.
Did that answer the question? Maybe we can.
Jay Leonard, you are unmuted. You just have to unmute yourself. Well, we can get back to you. Just go ahead and put another message in the chat pane and we'll get to you.
So I think to Andrew's point, any city or county would need to, depending on which department is doing the annual report, you might need to contact the department that oversees MWILO implementation and get the data that you need to put into the annual report from that department.
Thanks, Kara. Our next CalGreen question is on the reporting. Are we reporting the number of projects subject to CalGreen started and finished between Jan and June 2022, or the number that were completed in full compliance between Jan and June 2022?
So it sounds like more the latter based on the way you're wording that question. So what you want to report here is the activities that should be included are those where the project has been completed or the necessary information is available to determine compliance with the CalGreen requirements. And we know that varies a little bit from jurisdiction to jurisdiction. So whatever time the jurisdiction has made that determination is the number of projects you'd include in that time period from January 1st, 2022 to June 30th, 2022.
And that question was from Billiam. Billiam, if you can unmute yourself, you can go ahead and see if that answered your question.
Hi, this is Billy. And yeah, I guess my main question was, does the project for the reporting have to have been started, after January 1st and then completed before the end of June? in order to be reported on? And then, yeah, so if the city doesn't have access to, like, if they didn't get the diversion report from the permit holder, then that would not count towards their total number of completed in compliance then, is that correct?
Yeah, it sounds like you would not have made that determination of whether they're in compliance with CalGreen requirements yet.
Okay, that answers the question.
Okay.
Thanks.
Uh-huh.
Thank you. I think we're going to be moving on. Oh, sorry. I see a question from Susan Contreras. Don't we include 2021 C&D projects as well as June 2022?
So this grid right here that I'm showing on the screen, this CalGreen grid, was incorporated into the electronic annual report because of SB 1383. So in this grid, you're only reporting on the period from June 1st, 2022 to June 30th, 22 in this grid. As far as potentially having a SHRE program, which applies to 2021, I think you're referencing this program here, which is just under this grid. And so if you, there's different, I guess there's, what am I trying to say? If you want to include information on 2021 under your 4060 SP, your concrete asphalt rubble program, you can include a note here on the program details page. And the part that used to live within this program details is this checkbox section. So if only you need to specify the materials collected for 2021 under that 4060 SHRE program, you just check the boxes here. You don't need to go into the program details of 4060. Does that answer your question?
Andrew, I'll just add on to that. Prior to the regulations taking effect, we didn't ask for, in the annual report, the number of CalGreen or Manuelo projects that were completed. So that's kind of a new requirement, as Andrew was laying out. It looks like we answered the question. Thanks, Andrew.
Yes, Susan confirmed that that Andrew did answer the question. Thank you, Andrew. Our next question comes from somebody that has part of their jurisdiction. Sorry, 1 second. Part of their jurisdiction is handled by LA Recycles, and how can they get a copy of that report?
I think your easiest and fastest way would just be to contact that garbage district and ask them if they'll give you a copy of that report. Outside of that, I think it would be a PRA request from us.
Thank you. Moving on, Cliff Chu asks on the complaint section, can we confirm that the complaints are related to monitoring and enforcement? And Cliff, we might need a little more from you if you wanted to describe the other types of complaints that you are getting or reporting on. You need to unmute yourself.
Hi there. Well, this is Cliff with County of Santa Clara. So we do get calls about, people getting missed pickup, broken cart lids and things like that. So I didn't think that those would be the ones to be included in the complaints. That would only, because of the way the section was structured, it looked like it was geared more towards the monitoring parts. I just wanted to confirm that.
Yes, you are correct. So the types of complaints that you'd be reporting here are, how we like to refer to them as kind of whistleblower complaints. So it'd be lack of a green or blue container, or incorrect labeling, or not receiving education and outreach regarding those programs, or no food recovery service, those types of complaints. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Mm-hmm. You have another question, Ray?
Oh, I'm so sorry. I was muted. Yes, our next question was from Mia Hoffman. We briefly touched on it, but for edible food recovery, they were asking if we're reporting tons recovered by an entity that are collected outside of our jurisdiction and will distribute outside of our jurisdiction, won't this mean that we are reporting the same information that another jurisdiction is reporting?
For the, let me just get to it here. So for the total pounds of edible food recovered by food recovery organization and services, throughout the report, you'll notice these little question marks, and you can also see it if you hover over just the grid section as well. But the tooltip, you're reporting on the total pounds of edible food recovered that was reported by food recovery organizations and food recovery services located within the jurisdiction.
And Mia, you can go ahead and unmute yourself if you wanted to add to that. If not, we'll go ahead and move on to Colleen Weeks.
Sure, yeah. So for the Santa Barbara County Food Bank, there's a location here in Santa Maria and also a location in Santa Barbara. And those two locations collect from the county and also from within Santa Maria. And so I'm just trying to verify what we're supposed to be reporting, since we might be reporting some of the same things that the county is reporting.
Well, you're responsible for what food recovery services and organizations in your jurisdiction are collecting.
Yeah, and since the Santa Barbara County Food Bank, they have a location here and also in Santa Barbara, I just want to make sure.
In the unincorporated portion?
I believe it's in the city. I don't actually know where it is.
Yeah, it'd only be if they're located in the unincorporated where there could potentially be double counting. But if they're unincorporated, they would not be within a jurisdiction, so there shouldn't be overlap there.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, thanks, Andrew. Colleen Weeks asks if we can address the issue of how the ordinance check marks keep going unmarked.
Colleen, we sure can. So what Colleen is talking about is in the, I'm not finding it with my eyeballs, there it is, enforceable mechanism ordinances section. And we've heard this a few times, and I have not still been able to repeat this error. So the error is in reference to this checkbox section here. So you can see that I've activated the page because I've save and cancel here. So if I check these boxes, I'll just check them all so it's easy to tell if they are clear or not. And then you hit save. It should be saved. And then if you edit again, I don't know exactly where, Colleen, the error is occurring, but I'll step through a few things and tell me if it's something different. So each of these grids is almost like going to another page. So if you've activated the page by clicking that edit button up here at the top of the page, then come down and select these, and then hit edit here. This is kind of like entering a different page, even though it's within the same section. Since I've already saved that information, they're still there currently. And then if I hit save again, they still seem to be there. So I'm not sure, Colleen, if you have a different scenario that you were doing, if you want to walk me through it and we can see if we can repeat that error.
Okay, what I noticed, and I think how I figured out where it is occurring is not, you mark them there, no problem. You put the save the way you're doing it and you're doing it, no problem. Suppose you go into the additional tab and then you go into, say, for example, one of the items that's on the Shree part. And then it, like, say you go into 60/20 or, you know, and then you come, I don't know why, but I'm thinking it's something to do with the additional tab, and then it happens. Because it's only after you've done it, you've gone past it, and it comes, I've saved it like several times with several cities. And it's not when it's on this page, it's when you go to print the report, then you notice it's undone because you did this tab, you went past this tab, you go 2 or 3 more tabs past it because you know you marked all the boxes. And so then you don't notice it until you go to print the report. So I don't know why it's occurring unless it's something you're doing when you go to the additional tab. And then what I've been doing is after I do anything on the additional tab, I go back into that section on this tab and check to see if it is unmarked. I don't know why it's doing it. I just know it happens.
So you're talking, so your issue is regarding the PDF summary.
Yeah, all of a sudden everything goes away and it is actually on, then you go back into that tab and they're unmarked. Then you go back in, you go into that tab, you mark them all and you save it. But I have literally done that tab, marked each of the boxes, saved just like you showed, just like you're supposed to do. Go to the next 2 or 3 tabs. Great, you think you did your last tab, great, and then you go to print a report and they're not there. So I don't know if it occurs when something else on the other tabs are making it to unmark them.
Hey, Andrew, I think we should also jump to a comment we have from Billy Miller, who is responsible for the Chowchilla report, saying that that is the report and they did have all those boxes checked before and they weren't checked when you were reviewing the report.
So yeah, so Billy, just to address that real quick, what I'm showing you, you're in so something different, right? This is our staging environment. So this is not production. So what you've entered is untouched. This is stuff that we've kind of played around with, or this is not production. So we're not manipulating your report in any way, just to alleviate that concern.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. But when you went to the original page to test it, there weren't any check boxes checked. And I have checked the boxes for what ordinances they have. So I just wanted to verify that that maybe the same problem wasn't happening for me because I had checked those. And it looked like when you were entering that section for the test that none of them had been checked.
It's really hard to see, Andrew. It's like it's almost like a white background for the check marks. So maybe it's just that folks aren't seeing the check marks.
Okay, well, Billy, just to address your concern, this is a completely different environment than where you're entering information. So it might be related, but it might not be, just to kind of answer that question, because we're in our staging environment, because we don't want to manipulate anything that everyone's been entering currently. So this kind of captures data at various points in time, which I don't remember the last time we did a production release, but I think our staging release, but it was probably a month or so ago. So it's just capturing kind of whatever was input whenever at that point in time. This is not production. Cool. I see the thumbs up. All right. So
Andrew,
then
this is Chris. The one thing I would add on this is that in the Chowchilla report in production, those boxes are not currently checked, but I went in and I pressed edit and I checked the first box and I pressed save and it stayed. Andrew, can you go back to the screen really quick? Because something we discussed on these is that, so press edit. And now try to leave the screen before you press save.
Just a different tab.
So that little box that popped up right there, we're thinking some people, if you have a pop-up blocker and you're not seeing that, that might be what was being explained before, where you check all those boxes and if you don't press save and then you go into the diversion program, you think you're just moving along. But when Andrew went and checked the boxes and then tried to go into the 60/20 program, he got that warning. So if you're not getting a pop-up, that could be why you think you're moving fluidly through it and then thinking I checked those boxes. But we've been testing this one because people keep mentioning it and we can't recreate that issue. So we can try that scenario with the
This is Colleen again.
Go to the final tab, hit the summary and see if something in that report summary is making stuff delete here. But Andrew, can you go down? I mean, we just kind of did that test live where he changed this, saved it, then went to the report summary, downloaded that, and came back, and all these boxes are still checked.
I don't think it's like that. What I've learned to do, and yes, I do get the pop-up boxes. This is Colleen. What I've learned to do after I've done every change, any changes, any edits, I go and do my one last time, I go straight back to this tab, click, make sure they're all there, clicked in, and save it, and then go and do a print report. So I don't really think it may be connected to this one. It just may some other hiccup cause it to unmark it. I've just learned to do everything. And yes, I do get the pop-up box. So no, I know very much to know that to save. I just make sure to do one additional step at the end before I print the report again, is to go back in and double check the ordinances.
Okay. Thank you. And there's a couple other questions in here saying that it will clear after the print summary, and someone else says it's there one day and then the next day it's not. So we'll keep plugging away on it. And next time it happens, we might just need, if someone sends a message to the Logic mailbox, we'll try to set up like a walkthrough, because we keep hearing about this and we keep trying to recreate it. And as you can see, the boxes are staying checked for us. So we're trying to figure out what exactly is going on there. If there is some kind of other glitch in a different section that is then causing this to revert, or if it's, people not pressing save, because we've got plenty of reports where this is not happening. This is not an issue everyone is experiencing. So it makes it tougher for us to pinpoint, but
yeah,
we'll keep plugging away.
And just for all of you out there that are reporting bug issues to us, we really appreciate that. We apologize for any inconvenience that's causing, but one thing I want to point out that I have not heard regarding specifically this ordinances section is that the issue is with the PDF summary. And I know it seems a little bit counterintuitive, but this PDF summary is kind of unrelated to the EAR itself in the sense of from a programming standpoint. So if you're saying that the checkbox is clear to specify that I'm selecting them in the EAR, and that when I go to my PDF summary, they're not showing up, is very different than just saying the checkboxes in the EAR clear. So just adding that extra layer of I check them in the EAR and then in the PDF summary, they are not showing up, is a very different issue than them clearing here, because we have had a lot of issues with that PDF summary and been actively working to kind of make sure that it's pulling data from the right fields and pulling headers from the right fields and so on and so forth. So now that I kind of heard that little detail of it's really related to the PDF summary, that's a whole different thing to check, just to kind of add that on. We appreciate that feedback, and please keep sending us that feedback. So hopefully that we'll look into that, Colleen, and check out the PDF summary specifically.
Yeah, so our chat indicates that a number of people have experienced the same thing, but as Andrew said, we'll go ahead and look into it. It looks like Kara addressed this question, but just for transparency purposes, we'll go ahead and go to Kelly Trimmer, who asked, noted that they received a Google Sheet from LA County Food Bank showing food recovered at the food bank and sent it to the food recovery organizations in each city. The amount differs from the actual FRO records for our city. Which should we use? And so Kara's response was, use the FRO's report, as they may have collected more edible food. If the FRO's report is much less than what the food bank reported to the FRO, you should follow up with the FRO to find out why. Let us know if you would like us to have a separate conversation about that, Kelly. Okay, so Marianne said that both the EAR and PDF summary are unchecked boxes for theirs. So that's just another internal note for something for us to look at. Okay, Marianne Antigua also asks, now with AB 1985 passing, is it still possible to apply for a reduced procurement target for the next year? And if so, with 1985 passing, would it be 30% of that reduced target or 30% of the original target?
Yeah, so unfortunately, AB 1985 applies to 2020, or starts in 2023. So for 2022, just report on the procurement that you're able to do and include that note in your recovered organic or recovered organic waste product procured grid of what you did to try to achieve your target, and also document that in your record keeping, and that'll all be considered as part of a compliance review.
All right, Marianne would like to thank you. We don't have any new questions at this time. We'll go ahead and check the SLCP inbox. So Chris, if there's anything there, please go ahead and send it to me.
Hey, Ray, I think there was a question regarding what Andrew showed up on the screen and how does the same thing apply if it for residential? Do you see that question?
Go ahead and look for it.
And Ray, there's nothing new in the SLCP box other than what I had already forwarded to you. And I think you got those. That included some of the very early questions and then a couple others that came in during the webinar.
Thank you. And Carol, I'll keep looking for that question. But I did find a new one from Vegan Mayan, sorry, asking, when organic waste collection is not available at the moment, the system does not let you pass the page without entering an RDRS facility number. How do you get around this?
Yeah, let me go to that section. I know exactly what you're talking about. So I'm assuming you're talking about this organic waste haulers grid. So you are correct that it does require you to pick at least one thing. And I think the assumption on our end here was that since organic waste is required to be collected, that you'd have at least one facility accepting that organic waste. And I don't think we do have an additional description. Good. So pick a facility just to bypass the question for now. And then in the additional description box, if you could just please note, this facility is not currently accepting our organic waste. We'll start collecting organic waste at this point in time. So just kind of include that note describing why you picked what you did, or blaming us for requiring you to pick that entry, and that will be good for this reporting cycle.
So Jeff asked, and there's no affiliation tied with Jeff's name here. So Jeff, if you wanted to go ahead and further clarify and let us know that information, please do unmute yourself. But they noticed that a part of the SHRI information is entered in different sections this time, but the full SHRI table is now in an additional info section. In that section, it says this section is optional. Does that mean that entering the tonnages for each SHRI item is optional?
Well, I guess I'll start with what applied to the old year doesn't apply to this year. It's a whole new build, just to say that outright. And then diversion tonnage specifically, we'll just go to one so you can see it, has never been a required entry. It's an optional entry, and it always auto-populated with the 0.00 so that you could bypass this section after, in the old one, clicking the easy button to say that all this, because the important part really on these program details is that the program details are updated and current or still accurate. And this is carrying over from last year. So whatever you selected in probably the last 10 years here or so will still be pre-populated in here. But it's just if you need to make any updates of whether maybe it was a program status has changed, you'd go into these program details to change that. One thing I do want to note specifically, let me get back out of here. Sorry, I clicked the wrong button. Is that we put this grid here, which is probably what you're familiar with seeing, just so you had an easy reference of all your SHRI programs. However, in order to complete the electronic annual report, you will need to go kind of tab by tab, section by section, and check these boxes next to the SRI program details to ensure that those program details are still current. You won't be able to do it on the additional information and report management screen. Does that answer your question or questions?
And Andrew, the one thing I can add to some of that is, the old SRI section, which I went over in these webinars for the last 10 years, was set up very differently because there wasn't more of an emphasis on those programs. And you had that same sort of list and you could go into each one. But for tonnage reporting, which a lot of people were used to, there was what was called the easy button, where you could press that and you could either save all your tons as 0, or that's where you could go in and put individual program tons. With the implementation of SB 1383, there's a little bit less of a focus on all that and the detail involved. So as Andrew has said, putting the tons in there is not required. I mean, it doesn't hurt, but it's not, we're not emphasizing that anymore. And it's just sort of a different setup. As Andrew said, it's a whole new build. So while you still have all the old SRI information, and if you want to put in an updated note, you clearly can, or if you want to go in and change any of the other details, you can. You don't have to. All you have to do at the very least is check those boxes on each tab.
Thanks, Chris. Next is Jasmine Hadin. Based on the PowerPoint screen for commercial collection container system grid scenario, does that apply to residential as well, single family homes and multifamilies 2 to 4 units?
I'm sorry, Ray, I missed that. Can you say that one more time? Sure.
I guess this question is based on the PowerPoint screen for commercial collection container system grid scenario. They're referencing a previous presentation, but does the collection system container grid scenario apply to residential as well, such as single family homes and multifamilies with 2 to 4 units? Jasmine, you can go ahead and unmute yourself if you wanted to provide more information to that one.
Yeah, thank you, Ray.
Hi. Hi, can you hear me?
Uh-huh.
It was just a quick question. You pulled up a PowerPoint slide and it showed commercial, and it was from a CalRecycle PowerPoint slide.
Mm-hmm.
And it showed a commercial collection system if there were 1,000 commercial customers and 2 of them had 2+ containers. So if we only partially rolled out our 3 container system for residents for carts, would we need to identify those who previously, for the remainder of the non-rolled out customers, would we need to report on those who opted out of a certain commodity, recycling or organics, and list them as 2 containers?
Yeah, you have a few layers there, but I think I got them all. So I'm going to start with residential versus commercial, and which I think was part of the question. So residential is single family and multifamily up to 4 units. And then commercial is commercial businesses plus multifamily with 5 or more units, just to differentiate those 2. In the collection container system grid, from a, it sounds like you said that the system that you have is a 3 container collection system. So you'd be specifying the 3 container collection system, and I'll go back to it because this would apply for your residential as well. Let's just say, instead of, we'll just cross that out and we can just call them generators, whether they be residential or commercial. You'd be reporting kind of the same scenario. So it sounded like your scenario, we'll just assume your numbers are the same, that you'd have 500 generators that have been provided that 3 container system, and that 500 of them do not yet have green or blue. And just to kind of clarify that generators cannot opt out of service. They can only be issued physical space or de minimis for commercial, but residential does not have an option to opt out unless they can show that they're self-hauling. Then they could potentially not have a green container because they're diverting the organics for the green container in a manner similar to how they'd be diverted if they had a green container.
So would this essentially be kind of like reporting our compliance numbers then? And like if we plan to do the rollout fully for all residents, single family 2 to 4 within the next few years, is that something we would identify in the additional information section?
Yes, that would be information you want to include in the additional description. And then I don't know if you specifically have had a NOINC in your specific scenario for delayed implementation of that
Yes.
service. Okay. Yeah, so you can include that type of information there as well of, as we specified in our totally forgetting what CAP stands for, corrective action plan, we will be rolling out this over by this date and making those kind of notes. Does that answer your question?
It does. So we need to go in and make that separation of the generators that currently have gray and blue, or green and gray, or green and trash and no blue or green, right? The respective, however it goes.
I mean, really that additional description is for the jurisdiction to describe and kind of paint the picture for what's happening in your jurisdiction. So however much detail you want to provide just really helps us gain a sense of what's going on in your jurisdiction.
Okay,
And what,
so if we're, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
So if we're already in with our NOIC and our CAP, then the additional information can just reference that as opposed to making the separation of the amount of generators who have a certain commodity.
Yeah, if all that's addressed in your CAP, you can just reference that, we have a CAP to address this. Yeah, go ahead.
Andrew, can you restate that? Because I think you wouldn't, in this scenario, you do need to tell us how many generators currently have the service. So I'm not sure if you were suggesting, can you still just, like in this scenario, still report 1,000 versus the actual number of generators that have the service? Can you clarify that? Because I didn't want to end with giving you misinformation.
Sure. Yeah, so you'd be in the collection container system grid. You're kind of referencing those highlighted numbers there. The 200 generators that have gray and blue and no green due to a waiver, and the 300 generators that have gray, blue, and green are the generators that have your collection service, your 3 container collection service. So you'd be reporting 500 and the number of generators that have that collection service. And then in the additional description box, you can talk about the other 500, the 100 generators that only have the gray and no green or blue, and the 400. I'm just kind of reiterating the words on the screen, but Jasmine, I think referencing your CAP and how it's outlined in your CAP is also an acceptable way of what to put in that additional description box.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Next up is more of a comment than a question from Cinchi Tan. But they said regarding the contamination inspection and complaints tab, reporting the number of notices, violations, or targeted education materials issued to generators might not be the best prompt. They suggest the number of generators who received notices, violations, or targeted education materials due to observed contamination would be better. Some generators receive multiple warnings, so the former is going to give an inflated number in the report.
Sorry, Ray, that was a lot of information. Who asked that question? I can look at it in the chat.
Sure, it was Cinchi Tan.
Oh, it was a recent one. They're not quite as easy to find in Zoom.
And Cinchi, you can go ahead and unmute yourself if you wanted to give a little more to that, but
it was mainly like a comment or a suggestion for maybe following year's reports, but it just seems like for the reporting, the way that you're asking for, the number of notices or targeted education pieces in response to contamination, like reporting that could be inflated because certain generators might receive multiple notices. So I was just suggesting that maybe in future years, we would report on the number of generators receiving those materials instead.
Got it. Thank you, Cincy. Yeah, thank you. We appreciate that. This initial bill, we really just wanted to follow how it was written in the regulations. but we also agree that it doesn't also necessarily provide the clarity needed of what is needed to be reported there. So we'll consider that for future iterations.
Thank you. Catherine Howells asked if we could clarify on the ordinance tab. Do we check the boxes for all that apply or only those where the local jurisdictions have adopted their own ordinance? And Catherine, you can go ahead and unmute yourself.
Hi, yeah, this is Catherine Howells. I'm with South Tahoe Refuse, working with the city of South Lake Tahoe. And I just wasn't sure, like I said in my written question, if we should check all of the boxes for those that apply, or just those where an ordinance was passed in the reporting period.
Yeah, so you're talking about the check boxes here that I have on the screen?
Right.
Yeah, so this section in particular, and what we tried to do in a lot of these checkbox sections is where there was overlap between AB 939, MCR, MORE, and SLCP or SB 1383, is consolidate that into one area so you didn't have to answer the same questions multiple times. So in this particular section, you're just checking all that apply, whether it was for 2021 or the January 1st, 2022 to June 30th, 2022 period. And I think I can go one step further, and we'll reorganize this again next reporting cycle, but those two, this one and this one, and potentially maybe that one, are all the SLCP required ordinances, not the mulch, unless you're procuring the mulch. And we're going to reorganize those. Like the top one has that tag SLCP. We'll make that a lot clearer of which ones are specifically SLCP versus which ones you just may potentially have. Does that clarify?
Yeah, okay, thanks.
Next
Andrew,
question.
actually, this is a good time to, if I can jump in really quick, regarding ordinances. And there is a question in here on, do we want new ordinances in 21 and 22 or all ordinances? One, for these check boxes, you would want to check anything that applies. If it's passed, whether it was last year, this year, whatever, anything that if you have those, check them off. But as far as uploading the ordinances, if you sent us ordinances sometime around the April 1st report, or as they continue to roll in over the next couple months, we do not need additional copies of that unless something has changed since whatever you had previously submitted to the SLCP inbox, as well as when you try to upload those documents, there is a 25 megabyte file size limit. So if you're trying to upload a 50 page or a 50 megabyte scanned version of an ordinance that's 100 pages long, that you're not going to be able to do that. So you will need to reduce the file size or split it into pieces and upload it that way. Another thing that might hang you up is if the and sign in C&D is a special character and it does not like files that have that symbol in the file name. So those are two things regarding ordinances. So one, if you've already sent us your ordinances at some point in the last 5 months, we're fine. We don't need them unless there's something new since you last sent it to us.
Thanks, Chris. Anything else to add, Andrew?
No.
Okay. Moving on to Meibo Yueng. Under the Enforcement and Monitoring tab, number of commercial businesses. It's over there. Okay. Can you confirm that to do a compliance review means that you'll ensure all commercial businesses with 2 or more cubic yards of service are subscribed to compost collection? If we have a mandatory composting ordinance, can I provide the total number of generators instead of analyzing and reporting on how many generators have 2 or more cubic yard service only? Another part is, does the 2 cubic yard or more apply to just compost and garbage or total compost, garbage, and recycle?
So I'm going to change one of the words that you were using there, and that's compost. and talk about organic waste collection, because that's what you're reporting on here. So what you're reporting on for commercial businesses, which includes multifamily of 5 or more units, would be those number of commercial businesses generating 2 or more cubic yards of solid waste, which includes trash, blue container, green container, is who would be included in this review. And then in the number of commercial businesses included in the compliance review, not recycling organics, would be the ones that wouldn't have a green container as an example, or potentially a blue container if that's the only way they can divert cardboard and paper. Does that answer your question?
So my question is, I want to get confirmation what exactly a compliance review is. I looked through the code. It sounded like that a compliance review means I need to make sure that the commercial businesses are subscribed to the organics collection. And so if our city already have a mandatory organics service subscription requirement, meaning everybody has to subscribe to organics, then does that mean my compliance review is completed because I know everybody is subscribed? And if so, do I still have to extrapolate the number of generators or accounts that only have 2 yards plus service? Or can I just say all 2,000 accounts, commercial and multifamily accounts are good to go? So I guess there's like multiple things I want to get confirmation, like what does it mean that I have done my compliance review that will be up to your standard? Secondly, can I just have like an over-encompassing thing because we have an ordinance in place? And thirdly is do I have to only find out how many accounts has 2 yard plus service? And now you clarify that the 2 yard plus includes blue, green, and black.
Got it. Okay, so compliance reviews is referring to a desk audit. So you don't actually have to go out to these businesses to verify they have all the containers. Kind of what we mean here, and no, an ordinance alone may not be enough to say they're all in compliance here. So as an example, what you'd be doing here is looking at kind of an Excel spreadsheet of your generators, identifying those that are 2+ cubic yards for the collective gray, blue, and green containers, and then kind of being able to verify from that desk audit that those that meet that threshold do indeed have, at least on paper, all 3 containers, or however many containers you have in your particular collection system.
Hey, Andrew, can we add on though? I think to one of the questions was all points, Andrew, spot on. But maybe if you also, rather than breaking out those that generate 2 cubic yards or more of trash, recycling, organic waste, if you wanted to report on all of your commercial customers, right? You could add that in the additional description that you're including all and not just breaking out the 2 cubic yards. And then you could say something to the fact that, we, all of these have a collection service and, something to that effect. And that would certainly be acceptable. We just need that clarification that what you're reporting is, all of your commercial businesses, not just the ones that are 2 cubic yards or more. Does that help?
Yes, thank you. So what I'll do is I will go through my records showing that we do have everybody subscribed to the organics collection, except for those that got waivers or de minimis, and explain it that way. That's perfect.
Yeah, and then those that got de minimis or space constraint waivers, those are still considered in compliance. They're technically, well, they are in compliance, so you don't have to take those out of your total number.
Right. Yeah. I would not.
Okay, good.
Because I did work on the compliance review on them. I looked at what they are. Okay, yeah, thank you so much. That clarifies it.
You bet.
Thank you. JC Bolden. If a jurisdiction has not yet done the calculation for a reduced procurement target, will they have another opportunity to do it on the quote full 2022 1383 report?
Yeah, that's actually a good thing to bring up is since you are only reporting the first 6 months, first, we wouldn't expect you to hit your procurement target in just 6 months period of time when you have an entire year to do so. Good job for you if you have. And then, so for this particular reporting cycle, it is kind of expected or anticipated that most jurisdictions are going to say no to this question, which grays out these boxes, and then you'd be done with this section.
Hey, Andrew, also, I think it's important to add that the data that you're using to calculate that reduced target is based upon the previous year's data. So if you're looking at having a reduced target for 2022, you would be looking at your electricity, gas, et cetera, purchases for 2021 to base that reduced target on.
Yes, thank you for that additional clarification.
Another clarification requested from Manette is just to confirm, do we include businesses in our industrial zoned areas of the city in the commercial section?
I think it depends on what kind of collection service they have. So yes, but potentially no if it's not a weekly collection, because this particular section and questions are based on solid waste collection per week.
Jennifer Anderson would like us to include the slideshow and PowerPoints that we were presenting, and to note they all are on the CalRecycle website in the SLCP page for their respective target audiences. But Andrew, if you can include the link for the specific one you were using, I think Jennifer would appreciate that.
Yeah, so the previous, I need to get rid of this little bar so I can get here. Sorry, I have a little bar in my way. Just do it this way and bring it up. So the slide, just to clarify, the slide presentations from the previous webinars have not been included because there really hasn't been any information in there other. But this particular one we can upload since it does have the kind of the slide you can see back behind the background. And I was trying to get, there we go, to show you, and I'll provide the link as well. So again, kind of all of these webinars, including this one that we're doing today, once we process it, are located on this webpage down towards the bottom. And just to kind of bring this up, I think we sent this out in a listserv message earlier this week, but a good way to kind of try to find information you're looking for is to first go to the respective transcript for the YouTube video and do kind of a keyword search. And it'll give you an idea of the minute marker of where you may find the answer you're looking for, of what we previously said in one of these other webinars. It doesn't match up exactly. It's probably within, I don't know, a 3 to 5 minute periods, but it will get you a lot closer than just randomly clicking through. So I would suggest doing a keyword search in a transcript and then going to the video to try to listen to the response there. So we will probably add that next one right here. And then we'll be sure to include this particular presentation along with it.
Thanks, Andrew. Jennifer also sends their thanks. From Wendy Bowie, for the Model Water Efficient Landscape Ordinance in Willow, we have a process in place to ensure that it is followed, but we do not have a county ordinance for it. Do we still check the box?
No, you only check the box if you have adopted an ordinance.
Chris, are we still clear on the SLCP inbox?
Yes, we got another question about AB 1985, but Andrew already mentioned that it goes into effect in 2023. It's not going to have any effect on this in any way.
Perfect. Then we will move on to Christine Williamson. Going back to collection. They just want to make sure they have it right. So in the collection system example, you did not enter 100 in the 1 container collection and 400 in the 2 container collection, but rather an additional description box. Only use the 2 or 1 collection box if they are official SB 1383 2 or 1 container collections systems going to a high diversion facility. And Christine, you can go ahead and unmute yourself if you want to go ahead and walk Andrew through it to see how this works in your particular situation.
Actually, you got it exactly how I wanted it. Basically, under the sample scenario you were showing, we would have, what was it, 500 in the 3 container collection, 0 in the 2 container collection, 0 in the 1 container collection, and then in the additional description box, you have the 100 generators plus 400 generators information.
I'm going to simplify what you said because there has been a little bit of confusion here, and I'll go back to this. So what this grid and this, quote unquote question is asking is, what is your system as a jurisdiction that you have in place? So if you have gray, blue, green, that's going to be a 3 container collection service. 3+ as an example would include a brown container for just food waste. And so it sounds to me, sorry, let me just ask it. You said you're doing gray, blue, green?
We are, we are still negotiating with our haulers. We have some residential customers, a few commercial customers who do already have 3 containers. We aren't going to have anybody who's going to have a 2 container or a 1 container collection system that's going to go to a high diversion facility. We just don't have a full rollout yet.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're only reporting those who have the full rollout in this section and actually have the containers. For anybody who doesn't have the actual collection yet, but will, those numbers are going into the additional information box, additional details box.
Correct. Yeah, you'll kind of notice on the screen that these are grayed out here.
Yes.
Until you actually check the box. And so you are correct that per 1383 regulations, these 2 systems have to go to the high diversion organics waste processing facility. You are not reporting the number of generators, that how many containers each generator necessarily has. So yes, you are correct in your interpretation.
Okay, thank you.
And while we're waiting for our next questions, JC Bolden wanted to clarify about the adjustment for procurement for the full 2022 1383 report, in which Kara addressed in our chat pane. The adjusted organic waste product procurement target is for the entire calendar year. So yes, for all 2022. And you may use the data for your purchases from the previous year. In this case, it is 2021 for calculating an adjusted target for the calendar year 2022. And also for Billy Miller's question about AB 1985, the adjusted organic waste procurement target is not affected. I don't think we have any new questions right now, so we'll go ahead and pause on that.
Yeah, I'm just going to make a statement while we're waiting to see if another question comes in the next few minutes. So there are a few kind of active bugs that we're fixing on the PDF report, which should be resolved tonight. So the message we sent out yesterday saying that our system will be down from 6 to 7 was referring to PM, not AM. So don't be in the electronic annual year tonight from 6 to 7 because your information you input may be lost, and a couple of bugs should be fixed there. Probably not the ordinances one. We'll have to look into that one still. Just want to say that, but as a suggestion, and I know it's not ideal, but for those of you that rely on the PDF summary report to have it reviewed, to send it through your review chain, whoever that may be, just as a suggestion to take screenshots of the live screen and include that, and then blame us for the issues in the PDF report and why they're not showing up.
Thanks for that, Andrew. Catherine Howells did post a new question for the container tab. Again, if our jurisdiction still has a one container system for some generators and that material is being taken to a facility that is unsure yet if they will meet the requirement of or the definition of a high organic diversion facility, do we count them in the one container system category?
Just going to reread it real quick to make sure I answer this right. So you're saying you only offer trash collection, or are you saying that in your gray container, all organics go into it and then they're processed? Which one of those two scenarios is it?
Catherine,
sorry, yeah, the second, that there's the gray container that's coming to a MRF and being processed. You know, but since we haven't gone through the 4 quarters of calculating our percentage of whether or not we would qualify as a high organic diversion facility, do we just include those generator numbers in the one container system category?
Yes, if your system is going to be a one container system, then yes, you would check one container.
Okay.
And Mary Pitto would like to a little help understanding the difference between Green Building Ordinance and Cal Green Ordinance.
That looks like maybe one that we just didn't necessarily remove because it looks like we kind of have those requirements listed twice down here.
Yeah, and also to add on to that, so some jurisdictions have green building, utilization of recycled content products in the building aspect. So that's the difference. Cal Green, you know, if the jurisdiction has certain aspects of Cal Green that require green building products in the construction, then it might be they would note just that they have the Cal Green. So I think to Andrew's point, we do have some cleanup there, but Mary, did that help answer the question? Great.
Perfect. And we have another question from Dana Point asking if the EAR report can be made into a shareable live document such as Google Sheets. They're wondering if the document can be used with the hauler, for example, concurrently.
So, I mean, as far as from our end, Google Sheets specifically, no, we are looking into adding maybe an exportable Excel sheet for next reporting cycle. The only thing that's kind of currently available, sorry, I went to the wrong button. You can click on the report summary here and it produces this PDF report with all that information. Or even on the, let's see if I get it right, the home screen on the EAR summary reports, you can do the drop down here for 2021. And that will also produce that same PDF report. But at this time, no on a fillable Excel sheet, but we are looking into creating that for next reporting cycle.
Hey, Andrew, you have spoken to the fact that on the various tabs, you can export to Excel. So you could do it in pieces, but we don't have a comprehensive Excel, export to Excel, correct?
Correct, yeah. So each grid you can export and then make it a various tab and make your own kind of sheet that way.
Yeah, so a little laborious, but you could do it. fairly quickly. Oh, that works too, converting it to Word.
Yes, thank you for the recommendation, Jeremy Brogan. Are we going to continue, or are we right at the end of the?
Let's do these last two and then we'll sign off.
Okay, sounds good. So Kimberly Nilsson asked, could we possibly make the summary reports more printer friendly in format and color?
So a suggestion there is to print in grayscale and not color, just on your end, to make it more printer friendly on your end. And we'll look into maybe not using green, but we really just wanted to, I mean, the issue is some of these questions are kind of long, and that's why these headers are so big, but we'll look into seeing maybe if we can shrink it down so they're not quite as big for the next reporting cycle. But we really just want to differentiate between the different sections.
A good recommendation for all printing. Debbie asks, or is still stating that the collection system is a little confusing. That we answered the first time that we are to put the commercial customers with the number of bins they have and notate why they have 1 or 2 bins. Then the last person, you said to not put 1 or 2 collection systems because of the high diversion requirement. So if we could just further clarify where to put the commercial customers that only have trash or trash and recycle at this point. And Debbie, you can go ahead and unmute yourself if you want us to go ahead and walk you through your particular situation.
I'm unmuted, but that's my question. I mean, all my cities are confused on this. I work for Republic, so, you know, if we have, residential is not a problem. Commercial systems is where I still don't get it. And even your graphic, I understood it the first time, then the second person asked the question and to me, it felt like a different answer. So where do I have, let's say 100 customers that only have trash right now and they haven't signed up? We have 3 containers available, but they haven't signed up. So where do they go?
You're offering a 3 container collection system.
Yes.
So it's 50,000 foot level. Your system is a 3 container collection system. You are not specifying how many containers each generator has. So you would not be selecting 2 generators and saying a number, and these generators only have trash, so therefore 1 container. You're saying 3 container system. And then just to go back here.
It's how many people actually have it then. Because so if I have 3,600 customers and 100, I mean, I guess this is where there's 100,000, there's 1,000 generators. And I know that people have heard this question 1,000 times, but go ahead, Andrew.
No, this is one of the trickier spots, and we're going to be looking at ways to make this particular grid a little cleaner, a little easier to use. It is kind of a confusing question. So yeah, so just like zoom out first of all is be my recommendation and say, what is the collection container system we're offering? And just on a real simple level. So you're doing gray, blue, green. That's your collection system, 3 containers. The number of generators that you're reporting, I'll switch back just so we get to the page, right? So 3 containers you've selected. This box here, number of generators, what you're going to report here are essentially, I mean, one way you could phrase it is say compliant, or the ones that have full service. And by compliant, there's a couple different ways to get there.
Okay.
Right? Is that you have the gray, blue, and green.
You can.
Which is the straightforward way. They have everything. The other way that they'd be compliant or have your full system, quote unquote, is if they had a waiver for a blue or green container.
Right.
So they still are being offered that 3 container collection system, and they've provided evidence of why they don't need a particular container, but they still have a 3 container collection system.
Totally clear up to this point. Now the other people.
Okay. And then, so in this particular scenario, the 100 and the 400, one way to look at them is they're just non-compliant at this point, right? They're just kind of refusing service or whatever. You haven't rolled it out or don't have containers or don't have trucks, whatever the reason may be. And then you just be describing that in the additional description of whatever that reason may be of why they don't quite yet have that 3 container collection system in the additional description box.
Okay,
Not-
so to be clear then in the 1 container, I'm not putting 100 from your scenario there.
Correct. This, if you selected this, CalRecycle is assuming that your jurisdiction collection system is gray container only, and that gray container is processed at a high diversion organics processing facility to remove all organic waste.
Okay, thank you. I got it.
Okay. And then Annika, is it related to this? Because we are
It
over
is.
time. Okay, we'll do it because this is a confusing section.
Thank you, Andrew. I appreciate it. So in that same vein, in Oceanside, we have a 4 container system available to to generators. And you know, that 4th container is for green waste only. A lot of our commercial generators don't need green waste. So in that scenario, am I just putting who has 3+ containers including green waste? Because that's probably my smallest number.
What's your 4th container that's not green waste? Because typically it's like brown, just for our example purposes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you'd be offering the 3+ container collection system, but really I'm going to flip around what you said, and from our perspective, your brown is your optional, not the green.
But Andrew, go ahead and stay with Annika though, because in that scenario, they're just in that case they are waiving the green container.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
So stay with that.
Gotcha.
So they would still be compliant because they had the waiver for that green container, but you're offering a 3+ container system.
Got it. Okay. And then obviously, and I know this has been the subject or the message throughout this is add additional details so we can give that kind of broader breakdown in the additional details section. So.
Yeah, and then it'll also be captured in record keeping requirements as well. So when we come to a compliance review, we kind of compare number of generators reported here versus all generators that are in your record keeping and really get kind of that complete picture of what's going on in your jurisdiction.
Got it. Thank you so much, Andrew.
Mm-hmm. And Kanisha, if it's related to this, I'll answer it. Otherwise, we're gonna end the webinar for today.
No, it was a question about ordinance.
Ordinances.
Mhm.
All right, is it a quick one? And then because we do have to sign off here. All right, go for it.
Sorry, I kept getting pulled away, but just for confirmation, I think Chris answered it, but it doesn't matter if the ordinance was adopted in 2022 or like 2002, as long as during this reporting period it applies, then we can select it.
Yes, because this is combining AB 939, MCR, MORE, and SLCP.
Okay.
So it's kind of recovering what you had in 2021 and previously, but still it wasn't in effect or in 2021, as well as new things that you may have adopted from January 1st, 2022 to June 30th, 2022.
Okay.
Yeah, and some of these may have been in effect, as you mentioned, since 02, like some of like anti-scavenging ordinances. Some places started those many years ago. So even if you had that checked off in previous years, because of this new build, you would need to go back in and check it off again. Okay. Obviously, because you'd get in there and you'd see it wasn't checked. You're like, we have one of those. So you would check it off then.
Thank you very much.
And one final note on that is since this is a new reporting system, a lot of those things that you have answered in the past, you will have to reselect. But we are looking into sections that may not change very often. So you don't have to reselect everything from year to year. But for this first one, you do have to select everything that does apply. So like the material sections and the ordinance sections and the C&D recycling sections as examples, and the procurement section.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. All right, I'll just sign off with, if you have further questions, to please email our slcp.organics@calrecycle.ca.gov email inbox, and we will answer your questions there. You can also report any bugs or errors or difficulties you find with the EAR in there as well, and we'll work to get those resolved, because we do recognize that we're coming right up to the wire, and you do need to get those PDFs through your review chain. And again, just as a reminder, our system will be down from 6 to 7 tonight, so please do not be in there doing things, because your data may get lost. We are fixing a couple of bugs. We'll look into the ordinances bug, and we'll notify you of the bugs that were addressed after that patch. All right, thank you so much. Hope everyone has a great day.
Thank you, Andrew.